Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juice, and today is day 21 of RPG A Day 2021. Today we're going to be talking about two more prompts. We're going to be talking about simplicity, and we're going to be talking about fear. So let's get started. If this is your first time here, be sure to smash that subscribe button, give us a like, and then at any point in this video, if you want to let your thoughts be known, please leave a comment below. So today we're going to be talking about simplicity and fear. And so these two words inspired a couple things for me. One, I was thinking, okay, what kind of systems do I like? I do tend to like simpler systems, especially if I'm going to run them. And it's easier to sell me on trying a new system if it's a simpler system. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like complex systems. I actually really enjoy, Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I think as a player, great system. For me to run that, it's a little bit more difficult. It does take away some of my immersion into the game. But again, I do still really enjoy that system. But because I like what I view as simpler systems, I really enjoy games like Call of Cthulhu. I also really like D&D 5e, for example. D&D 5e is one of the simpler games for me to run. I feel like I can just run it without really much prep, and I can have fun encounters and just focus on telling a fun story with my players. Call of Cthulhu being percentile based is, again, a pretty simple system, I think. It's pretty straightforward. You roll percentiles and you try to get the number underneath your percentage, and you succeed. If it's an opposed check, you might have to get a hard or extreme success. Or if it's something that's extremely difficult, you might have to get a hard or extreme success instead of just a regular success. And to me, that just makes a lot of sense. I think, other games, like I came up on Palladium Books, and while that's a simple system, that's a system that's made up of multiple systems. For instance, you use percentiles with skills, and you use a d20 for attacks. It's a little bit of two things, and sometimes that can be difficult for new people. But when it comes down to it, like I said, I really like D&D 5e, Call of Cthulhu when it comes to the simplicity. I feel like I could run it or play it and have a ton of fun. Now, fear kind of came up because, there are some mechanics in the DMG for how to handle like sanity and fear and things like that for D&D 5e. And I personally don't get too into horror games from a horror standpoint. I can enjoy them, but I don't typically feel scared. I don't typically feel tension because of the horror. And I don't know why that is. I've played plenty of Call of Cthulhu. I've played multiple one-shots of it. I'm currently in a campaign of it. And I've never gotten caught up in the horror aspect of the game. Even, when people have tried to do stuff in D&D, I've, again, never got caught up in the horror. It just doesn't work for me on that level. And I don't know if it's because of my play style. I just don't get as immersed mentally into a game. But it just doesn't work for me. Now, what does work for me sometimes is, for instance, playing an old school D&D game. I can feel fear for my character when they're about to die. Maybe it's a character with only a few hit points and you're in a combat with a wolf in, say, I don't know, some old school Keep on the Borderlands, and you decide to fight the wolves, even against your best judgment, because why not, and you barely survive. There's real fear in that encounter. Like, I felt tension because I thought my character was going to die. And that was great. And that's just one example of that. I've felt this in AD&D before. I've felt it in D&D 5e, where I'm like, oh, wow, we're fighting something that hits pretty hard, and we don't hit that hard. Like, I've felt that before. Just had a session of Tomb of Annihilation where we fought a red dragon, and I think it was an adult red dragon. It may have been a young red dragon. I don't know. But the way it was narrated, I thought my character could not handle a combat with a red dragon. I felt fear for my character's life in that moment. Now, no, I wasn't scared, but I felt tension. And that's, a really fun thing that you can do it simply, very simply. Look up, books that, have some horror elements. Stephen King is a writer that I think a lot of people praise. I'll admit, I don't read a lot of books. But if you want to go and look up how they've written up some of the monsters in these things, and I remember coming up, in high school, and I used to read more back then, and I remember reading about some of those things in books like that, and thinking, oh, this is very interesting. I could see being afraid of this. Or Goosebumps. When I was a kid, I read Goosebumps from the time I was 7 till I was 13, and really enjoyed those books. And again, some of the stuff they wrote in those, I remember the one where the father's turning into a plant creature, and he's approaching the cellar from the outside, and not being afraid myself, but thinking, oh man, this is kind of scary. And you can use some of those elements in your tabletop RPGs, if you want to get that tone across. But for me, to really feel that tension, it can't just be that flavor text. For me, I also need you to go that extra step and make that thing actually physically hard to beat. Now, Call of Cthulhu doesn't always have combat. We're playing Pulp Cthulhu. It does have combat in our campaign. But when I've played one-shots and things like that, it's always been more of the horror aspect, no combat kind of deal. D&D 5e, though, has combat. Or Dungeons & Dragons in general has combat. And the description you use in combo with the damage it can deal, as long as you have it hit hard, if you roll crappy, you roll crappy. But yeah, I think especially early in a campaign, if you use a creature, a monster that hits hard, you can definitely make me start to second guess what I'm doing as a character. And so, yeah, that's all I want to throw out there. This is more of just me voicing my opinion on what works for me. I'm not saying this works for everyone. I know a lot of people love Call of Cthulhu for the horror elements. And, I can honestly say Call of Cthulhu is an amazing game. I think D&D is an amazing game. I actually think all the D&Ds I've ever played are fun games to play. Never played 3.5 or 3rd edition. I did play Pathfinder 1st edition. Never played D&D 4th edition, but I've played old school D&D, AD&D. Obviously I'm big into 5e. So, those are just some of my thoughts, though. Would love to hear yours in the comments below. This was Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.